Boop boop ba doo boo doo. Boop boop ba doo boo doo. Hey boop boop ba doo boo doo. Hey boop boop ba doo doo doo. Boom boop ba doo doo doo. We got a whole band now. Ah, yes. Well, hello. Welcome back to Escaping Dystopia. We have a whole new thing going on here. Yeah, this is it. This is the new place, the new digs, as it were. Got a show going on for you tonight. We'll get this going. I don't have my outline up yet, as I would normally, 'cause I don't know. I was busy. We moved to a new place, hence the new background. Yep. So, I bought a house. Not sure what that has to do with escaping dystopia, but probably a good idea to try to escape dystopia. Buy a house. Yes. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Now I will walk with you again, making payments for months forever. Now this place is gorgeous, so love it. Anyway, so it's been a couple weeks since we were able to talk to you, the royal we, if it were. This is, of course, Roy Taylor at Escaping Dystopia. I saw that the other day. There was this guy on the news who got busted for like $13 million worth of being a sexist asshole. And I guess kind of that shameless self-promotion thing is probably not a horrible idea if you're going to be talking to people through a camera for a long time. But it is what it is. So, let me go through a little bit. We have some things that we do want to talk about tonight that are real-world stuff. The Syria bombing campaign, if you can even call it that. Some of those, that core Trump support, we'll talk about both those things. And then a little bit about the massive hypocrisy that is the GOP, because it's been interesting. A little bit more focus on that, on Paul Ryan himself and some of the other people who make up that group. And then a little bit about the point of escaping dystopia and how I run things, which is odd, I know. So it is. We'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll have a little bit about Mormon Intellectuals, which was a fun conversation this week. And then some about just the foreign policy shift of the U.S., which is kind of what we're going to start with, and then we'll kind of end up there. And as always, anybody who would like to bring up any subjects or talk about it, you just type, I think. That's really all there is to it. My hair's a little wacky and wild. I need a haircut. And the studio lights, I don't know, seems alright. I'll have to get something over here for the dark side. Can we have dark side and light side? We'll play with it, but this very well might be the background you're looking at for a little bit. Although I do have a couple other ideas for down here, so... got a whole studio to work with, so who knows what we're going to do, who knows. So, a little bit of water. I have a little bit of a tickle in my throat, which had my son coughing for the last few days. It seems to be going around. But it looks like last Friday, the U.S. American people, shot some missiles into Syria at Bashar al-Assad. After the media reports of chemical weapons attacks, this was after a 2013 agreement with both us, Russia, and Assad that he would not own these anymore. There was an attack. About 80 people died horrifically. If you want to watch horrific deaths, you can. Apparently, this really got to Miss Ivanka Trump, who then said, "Daddy, you can't let him get away with this. Despite all of your campaign promises to the contrary, your long history of mocking such action, you got to do something immediately." And so the president did. Fired 60 Tomahawk missiles at roughly $1.4 million, a personal fortune, a lifetime of work, each one. at an airbase in Syria. I don't have the name handy because I'm somewhat unprepared tonight. He shot those missiles, blew up some planes. Within a day, the airbase was functional again and continued its conventional bombing attack. There's been all sorts of crazy conspiracy stuff going on, and news about this is hard to come by. We live in an era and a world now where, prior to this, of course, we have this constant lying, cycle from the president of the United States. And now something big has happened, and that's where we would go to normally kind of look for assurance or news or whatnot about why and what's going on here. Instead, we have a situation where people have noticed that he's going back, somebody on his staff is going back and deleting old tweets for condemning Obama for doing something like this. Hey, little sweetheart. Dad's talking right now. Can you go upstairs for a little bit?
Okay. Tell me when you're all done.
I will tell you when I'm all done.
Dad, how I in pennies, I connect this to one of the computers and then I get the tokens.
Very cool. Yeah. So anyway, when you do this stuff at home, like kids walk in and say, "Hello, Dad. How do I do this?" Anyway, kids are adorable, so they always get a few minutes. And besides, this is live Facebook. Who cares? There's 2 people watching. So as I was talking about, I think a little bit. Let me see if I can pick up where I was going with that. I'd have to rewind this, but this being live and not expecting an interruption. But anyway. So you had a campaign where he basically mocked for years the notion of the president having the authority to just do this when he wants to. Obama would have liked to, I think, shot this. He went to Congress. They said, "Who the are you? You're not even a legitimate president, dude," and said no. I actually had my my former congressman, I should say, because I moved. I have a new congresswoman, congressperson, I should say, a cis Congress? I don't know what they're called. She actually is going to go after vaping, so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, my old one, Mike Kaufman, actually literally is one of those guys who was like, Obama has no authority to do this. He needs to come and ask Congress, and we need a plan, and we know what we're doing, and need to spell out exactly why this is in the vital interest of the American people to spend this money that we can no longer afford, like art. Which is roughly, $80 million is no joke. Meals on Wheels, I think, is, what was that, 2 tomahawks? Maybe we should start, talking about public service programs and, the number of tomahawks that they cost. So we did that. The effectiveness, and I changed the news cycle. I mentioned this a little bit. I don't know, as far as... See, the thing about doing these kind of military attacks, if you want to actually continue to apply this pressure, you have to continue to apply this pressure over time. And so this is why a single attack over a single night, it really isn't going to do a whole lot to change the situation on the ground there. Now, we do have some people, of course, on the ground there, apparently. Anyway. So I'm sure there's some other force vectors in the potential for that, but I'm not sure what's going to happen there. If we're going to see just this huge increase in engagement in Syria. And on what level? Because again, this is it's the thing that's odd about it is that this is exactly opposite of what the guy campaigned on, and in fact mocked the very notion of helping this. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. But again, the notion that we're the good guy, world police, that kind of thing. No, it's just the economic nationalism. This again, I think you see this again a little bit with the Kushner-Bannon battle, the Javanka. I don't. Yeah, I think it's odd. I don't know. In response to the Shonda's comment, they definitely wanted an escalation. The thing about it is, and this is what's been odd, I think, for a lot of the cable news people and myself, is a lot of people would have liked to see a firmer response against Assad, and that was why it was so frustrating to see the congressional Republicans just stonewalling anything official that we could do. it became very frustrating, I'm sure, for Obama as well. And so now you have a situation where he can just do this. Now, this could very well, if this escalates too much and then 2018 goes really bad for him, you have a pretty obvious investigation target for why did you do this at this point and that kind of stuff. But anyway, so we'll see how this goes forward. It's interesting, too, also, that the justification here is all focused on the terrorism side of it, because it's all about the use of weapons of mass destruction. It's not the matter of civilian casualties per se, because Trump seems to be very, very at home with the notion of civilian casualties, but it's the notion of using gas to get after those terrorists, as it were. And that's the thing. Assad very much assumes and goes with the notion that the people who he was bombing are in fact the ISIS that we were supposed to work together to destroy. Yeah, I know Putin knew about it, apparently. I mean, and that's the thing, too. They had to make sure they couldn't have, if they had bombed the base and really gone after the base and tried to inflict, I think 6 casualties, 60 missiles, and they shot 6 planes. I'd have to see exactly. Again, you have to wonder about the effectiveness of it. And that's the thing, too, moving forward, because, again, the costs here are real, so the effectiveness and what's the plan, what's the outcome, what are you trying to do, all that. Now, all of this only matters, we're going to move on a little bit, to those people who aren't already supporters, that 38% of folks who... Anybody, I mean, that's the kind of the core, this was part of Bannon's political long-term strategies, this core... hardcore group of supporters is just not going to turn away, really. And how far they went down, you'll probably see a little bit of a bump for the moment for the rah-rah. Because, again, like a lot of people said, a lot of people actually did want to see a much firmer response to Assad. The using it, however, as a distraction to move away from investigations is just really... that's the thing that becomes... difficult to swallow for a lot of folks and really take this on the level. And you see how a president with very little credibility has a hard time selling the notion even that bombing a bad guy is a good thing. And we'll see how long he can push on that. So we've seen also now the massive hypocrisy that is the GOP. Now, we had today a Supreme Court justice confirmed in what I will probably consider for a long time a stolen seat, straight up stolen, right? This was something that I worked for in 2008, knowing that there was, it did Obama win in 2012. Man, it's a lot of work. That's one of the things that a president gets to win and do is appoint Supreme Court justices. And then the Republican Senate basically said, Constitution, right? And said, no, we don't have to even look at your nominee. It's an election year. Screw you! Which I can't, I can't really, and this is why I'm glad that the Democrats filibustered, and the Republicans invoked this nuclear option. This, I think, is an aptly named Senate procedure to invoke this idea that you no longer need cloture, right, to move on with a Senate vote, that you can just have 51 senators to close it down and move along. This, I think, is a bit of a destruction of the Senate. And I wrote this on my senators page, Corey Gardner. And I said, you've helped here with the destruction of our democracy, and that's the hyperbole at this point is so. But again, folks, this show that I'm doing is called Escaping Dystopia, and this thing where did they just change the rules of the Senate forever, and why the Senate works like it does? Yes, they did, and so they made it so. Oh yeah, now I'm. Well aware of the hypocrisy of the GOP regarding balancing. Oh, and by the way, for people who bring up the Biden rule, here's a quick way to shut him down. Joe Biden was talking about a Supreme Court nominee in an election year, but he was talking about a strategic retirement, and that's the point. And then this is my kind of pat answer for this is like Biden was talking about a strategic retirement in election year. Scalia died of natural causes unless you think Obama killed him, and that's whatever. So it's just, there's massive, it's a stolen Supreme Court seat, and that to a certain degree, like if he is the deciding vote on a major decision, there's a heavy case to just dismiss that, which really, again, hurts the democracy quite badly. So I think what the Senate has done this last week is going to come back, and it's going to come back to them, I think, pretty hard. If it can. It's the thing, there's when you have only, 15% of the congressional seats in the House are even competitive in any way, shape, or form, and then the rest are decided in the primary. I mean, you do have inter-party, and this is where I think for those, Bernie-crats, or whatever you guys are going to call yourself, that is where you fight and change the party into something that you can then support and not shit on all election season. Please, thank you. That would be great. So we saw also, I guess they're going to do some tax reform this week. I'll probably talk about it on the show this week as we try and get back on a normal schedule. The tax reform, I don't see how this can go anywhere. They don't have, again, the only ruling coalition that we've had in this country in Congress for a number of years now has been the same Democrats and a few Republicans, enough to give them this ruling power, because the Tea Party Freedom Caucus, right, they don't want anything. They don't want the notion of government to be in there. And so trying to crack deals with them, as Ryan has tried to do, as Boner tried to do and failed. I mean, remember, this guy Boehner, he was a huge deal maker, and he couldn't get these people to budge because they just don't care, because they're not in competitive districts, and they can crush. You can crush anybody you want to throw up against me. So I don't know what you're going to do to get those folks out. It would be interesting to see now with the there's going to be court packing like you wouldn't believe, by the way. Just wait for this, too. Once they got rid of that rule, one of the other things that the Republicans did when they controlled the Senate was filibuster all sorts of Obama nominees. And they had, prior to them trying to change the rules before that, filibustered more of Obama's nominees than had been filibustered in the history of the nation. This is not even talking to the guy, which they did with Garland, but not even considering his other appointments. Now that means there's tons of vacancies on courts around the country, which are now going to be filled by somebody who's going to be like, give me money, I'll give you a seat. Trump's sister, I believe, is a judge, by the way. And he's going to appoint probably more judges than anyone else in history if he's not indicted by the FBI any day now. Which is that fun thing about this whole thing. It could be at any point, right? Because this investigation is still ongoing. We know he's being investigated for something that he's obviously got serious issues with. So that's why I'm kind of trying to keep this a little bit of the perspective, and I haven't been able to really kind of talk about this for a couple weeks, but when Nixon was doing all his thing and he got reelected, and after doing all these dirty tricks, and think about how, people were like, this is so bad, how can we deal with this, and being in that moment, right? Now, when we look back on it in history, we don't see Nixon as that ever-present, super powerful being as he was in those moments before his downfall, right? We see him as this cowed, chastened criminal. And so experiencing time in history when it's going on is a little bit different than when you look at it through the lens of, the past that has passed and is already set. Because the past does not change, whereas the future still has the potential to. And while, I'm being, of course, somewhat speculative about the downfall of our current president, and that it's going to be fun and hilarious to watch, and that happens before he drags everyone else down with us, which, I don't know, it's going pretty fast. I guess there's people heading over to the Koreas at the moment, but... So anyway, it's, keep up on the fun things to watch. Now, speaking of the fun thing to watch, in that whole, Republicans being just ridiculously incompetent, Nunes, it's not Nunez, there's no Enye. Nenye. Devin Nunes stepped aside as the lead House investigator of the Trump-Russia imbroglio. That's a great word. I don't think I've ever even used that out loud before. Imbroglio. That's twice. Nunes stepped inside. So he's not going to be running the House investigation of the president. Nor is he, but I guess that frees him up to just go over there and tell them what the other people are talking about, because I guess he's still on there. So we had that step down, and then we also had the Bannon stepping off the Security Council, which was very nice. The Security Council needs to be very serious people. The McMaster thing there, that should help, a few percentage people sleep a little bit better at night. Although, again, we've got generals everywhere, so. That's why you can cut all the arts programs and they'll be fine with it. So, I don't know. What are you going to do? So, Bannon is not on the principal committee of the National Security Council. I'm not a National Security Council expert or on the how the government actually does it, but I do know that that's a good thing. They do have special meetings where everybody's in there. Like you saw the picture, right, where he had the Secretary of Treasury watching this missile shoot thing. I don't know why that guy was in there, but he was in there. They had that picture. I don't know if you've seen that picture. There's a picture of them with their little iPads. They're not even iPads. They're like some other thing. But Bannon's off the Security Council, the good part. And also, so we'll get to it a little bit, but the shooting in Syria and what that kind of commits the president to is far different than the vision that Bannon had for how he should deal with this situation. But there's still a line there he's not all the way over, I don't think, away from the nationalism really all that much. Which is why their statements coming out are so odd, and this thing is, again, just very, very odd. So, I am moving along. We got 25 minutes or so. I was a few minutes late starting, so we're still going good. I did want to talk about one thing, which is interesting, and we'll see. I'll just put this out there. So, I don't know if you've ever noticed some of my writing, but I like to play with our language. I do. If you saw my show about one of my life's work kind of thing, language and the way people communicate is kind of a big deal for me. And using words in one of the fun things to do on occasion is to use words that have multiple meanings at the same time. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was looking for what's kind of the point, one of the meta points of this escaping dystopia and what I'm doing with the whole Facebook for the moment, and looking, and I was just looking for people to fight with me, and that notion though, and there's no way, and if you read that right, is just English, right? Looking for people to fight with me, what? To fight alongside, against, with kind of covers both of those, and that's I don't know. I've always found that to be so interesting that you can. Have that same statement, and it can be something that, I'm looking for people to fight with. That's why I do it like this. And I do think that even in the sense of fighting alongside against one another, or I think this is why spirited argument is worthwhile, and bringing out one's best foot forward and honing, as it were, one's skill against others, people who also enjoy to debate and talk about those things is a fun thing. I do it in an obviously slightly more confrontational than necessary manner, but I find that tends to put things on a different vector than were you to not do that, and makes things far more interesting to watch. Drama is, of course, if you can do drama and comedy, they're both entertaining, both good sides of the coin. So the answer, again, for me, doing what I'm doing, is kind of that, why not both? Why can't we be with that notion of with training and also with winning, and finding that best argument to use and that best way to to go at a notion, and what's the strategy moving forward? Because there is a huge cultural battle going on. Many people have been aware of it for a while, but there's, this is part of that. As I go down to my basement to yell at my tablet. Like Scott! Scott! Ah! Did you guys see that? By the way, that was pretty funny on Saturday Night Live. It was pretty good. He even had like a goatee. Like me. So it's fun. It's good to be back. So, there's this conversation that I got into, and it's because I saw, and sometimes the way my brain works, if you can call it that, sometimes I just see like combinations of words that don't quite jibe. It's jibe too, apparently. It's not jive. I learned that recently. I didn't learn how to open a banana until I was over 40, so just learned that a little while ago and keep learning stuff. Speaking of learning things, or not. So anyway, sometimes like words or phrases or things that people say or whatnot will be like, what? Or just read it along. Kind of get that itch. And it was this phrase I saw, and it was just this Mormon intellectual. I don't mean to just be so mocky, but oh my God, the conversation, I don't know if you can see it to the degree that it's out there. I'll put it in the book, Conversations. But this concept of being an intellectual or using that word and then wrapping it in the limits of what religion, particularly this one, has to have you say you believe is just wow. It's been wild. So my big question that I was asking was, how do you guys reconcile this, fact, right? Obviously, that there's no physical evidence of anything that happened in the Book of Mormon. And it turns out that the answer is basically 3 parts. A, it doesn't matter. B, you're an asshole for answering. And C, fuck off, go away. But it doesn't matter. It was such an interesting, angle to take at, that, just, kind of that official, whatever. I don't know. Mormon intellectuals. Anyway. So, back to the real world. So, we had I'm so vicious. But I entertain myself? I don't know. And you, if you're laughing, click the button. So we had a big foreign policy shift, or did we? This is, I guess, the question, right? So pushing very hard from the top for this, again, economic nationalism. We're trying to ban people from other countries. It's not working so much. They're harassing people at the border, left, right, and center, scaring away many, many people. They had the arrests at the border were wildly down, actually, from what they said. New hires, curiously, were also down quite a bit as the economy slows down, because there's a lot of places, especially tourists, that aren't coming because they don't want to have their email read in order to enter the country. And American citizens who don't want to leave to have to come back and have their email read. Now, it turns out this really only seems to apply to Muslims and people with those names, but this situation is there's this burn keeps going on. So, but anyway, before this last week, and what's odd about this, what's kind of fun about waiting to do a show, but also, if you just wait forever, of course, you'll not get anything wrong, but of course you also never do a show. Because I was going to talk about how we had been moving kind of as the country from a foreign policy shift from these good guys and democracy and kind of this notion that the U.S. is a force for good in the world to standing here with Putin and allowing Assad to be like, actually we're fine, we can deal with this. And then we have this immediate 90-degree shift. Just a complete, I guess, depending on how you're looking at it, 90 degrees, 180. It's not 360, although I wouldn't doubt that we're going to end up at a 360 shift as Bannon comes back into favor. And now it's all of a sudden gassing people, no big deal. And there's actually video of Trump saying that, for talking about Saddam Hussein and his use of gas against civilians. So anyway, and then there was one final little thing I was going to talk about. I don't know if you saw it. This was actually last week, but National Park guy's face getting that Trump donation. Oh, man. Yeah, the graft and corruption up there at the top is just a little out of control, I think. A little tiny bit. And so we'll see how that goes on. But apparently he is giving people... he wrote a check to somebody. Oh, that was my joke, that he can't use USAA, because there's nobody in his family who's ever served this country. Thanks, Dad. But... So, that's about all I was going to do. I just wanted to get back on the horse, and I'm still alive, still kicking. Got some new digs! Hopefully we'll have a more coherent show for the next week and keep you guys entertained. Might do a little bit more often now, because my new studio is self-contained, as it were, a little bit. And so it doesn't require so much effort on the part of the production staff. Which means it's a little bit easier for us to do shows around here, so... Might do a couple more instead of wait. But anyway, thanks everybody who wandered by. Those of you that clicked, feel free to keep clicking. That's how I guess the internet talks to itself. So I thank you, and I hope you have a good one. Peace out.